most of you guys have people you're working with, and now we go to contract, right? So what happens after the contract? We now have people from all over the place. And for those of you that missed what we're doing, on Tuesday nights, we always talk about some of the fundamentals. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about the leverage and what we bring to the buyers and sellers. But tonight I want to talk about, now you're under contract, right? You've written that contract. We get it negotiated. Now what, right? This is the most important part, because from what happens from contract to close is typically what determines whether this is a transaction and you will never see this client again, or if you build a client for life, right? I will tell you, in all of the transactions that I've done, some of them, we all know those transactions that are, 30 days, or sometimes the lender can get it done in less. And, we go to, 30 days and we're done, and it goes relatively fast, right? Well, when we do it fast like that, it's not as stressful. It is stressful, but especially when we have those contracts that are going to last a little longer, maybe 60, 90 days, maybe it's a construction contract. Sometimes they're, what are we seeing now? A couple of short sales. Short sales, I've done short sales that have taken as long as 18 and 19 months, all right? So what happens a lot of times is when we get to the contract phase, a lot of that excitement of, oh, I'm looking for a house starts to go away, and the realization steps in, right? And people start to get stressed out. Oh my God, what's happening? They just committed to a large, usually the largest purchase of their life, right? So this gets very stressful, right? So there's some things that we have to know that are happening so we can educate our buyers, okay, so they understand it. I usually make jokes about it. That typically they're, I'll always tell my people, listen, you're going to call me at least twice during this, freaking out, all upset that something's going crazy. And I'm going to let you know that this is normal, right? We cannot follow our buyers down the rabbit hole. All right. So when they start getting crazy, we have to be, like some of you heard me say, we need to be that lighthouse in the storm, right? We need to be that focal point, that calm, that thing that gets our clients all the way to the end. All right. Does that make sense to everybody? So now part of that, and in our buyer's presentation, we kind of list it out so you have that nice handy dandy flow chart. But after the buyer's consultation, and once we go into contract, typically that book gets buried underneath all the other paperwork. So, realistically, what are we doing once we go to contract, right? Once we have all of the accepted signatures, we now have an accepted contract, correct? So now some critical things are going to happen. One, if you're using a TC, if you're on the team, you already have one. If you're not on the team, I highly suggest getting a TC because all of us are good at something. None of us are good at everything. All right. So with a good TC, you turn that paperwork over, and that TC is going to make sure that we hit all of our marks, because the contract is not a recommendation. This is a legally binding contract. All right. So we need to make sure that we get all of our documents, the full contract, over to that TC, right? We need to make sure that it is complete, and that's why we have our agent, our contract compliance, right, to make sure that we're hitting all the wickets. But a couple things are going to happen real fast. One, right, loan application has to be made. Now, if your loan officer did the right thing, they should have pulled most of the documents already, and all we need is maybe some supplemental documents to turn in. Okay. Now that's paperwork. Unfortunately, you scan that over, you don't see a lot happening. We also have usually the inspections going on, right? Now, you want to make sure that the way I do it is when I'm writing a contract, I'm already checking with my inspector to make sure that I have an inspector that can do the inspections within a couple of days, right? With the as-is contract, Martha, do we need any reason to back out of that contract?
No.
While we're in the inspection period, you do not need to prove a single thing to back out of the contract. And this is why it's so critical when we're negotiating offers on the buyer side. We want to let that seller know that we are on point and we're going to get those inspections done really fast. On the buyer's contract, it says if left blank, right? It says a certain amount of days. How many days does it say on the contract if it's left blank that we have to do inspections?
15.
15 days. Guys, that is a long time to leave a house on the market, okay, with an escape clause. As a listing agent, you will never get that past me without a really good excuse why you need the full 15 days. Okay? Most of my properties, I can get an inspector in there within 2 days. So realistically, 3 to 4 day inspection period is more than sufficient as long as we have our ducks in a row ahead of time. Does that make sense? Now, for those of you that are have not done a lot of these, okay, that's why I'm here. Myself and Ken, right? You all have access to Ken, and Ken will, tell you who we have in the area and help you identify which inspectors can get it done in a timely manner. I wouldn't want to say 4 days to find out that the inspector's backed up for 5 days. We'd be in a bad spot, right? That's why I always call ahead of time. It's also why we don't only have one inspector, right? Heaven forbid they go out of town or whatever it is. Most of our inspectors have multiple inspectors, so they can typically handle it. But we want to make sure we have that. Now, while we're doing that, right? What's going to happen during an inspection? They're going to find some things wrong with the house, right? Right? Can anybody tell me, Daniel? Let's go with you. As far as a generic inspection, can a house actually fail inspections?
Yeah.
How? I'm not talking about for permanent purposes, in general.
Oh, okay. Anything, a crack or leaking or something like that.
Okay, but technically, other than for financing purposes where it won't qualify, technically it's really not failing. All right. It can be, everything can be fixed if we go to the extreme, right? When I'm dealing with my contractors and when we do have those, or not my contractors, but my investors, right? We're making offers based on a total loss, right? Because if the house is that bad with foreclosures and stuff like that. So they don't care if the septic, they've already calculated the septic not being there. So the house being in disrepair, it can still be repaired, even if it has to be torn down to the foundation and rebuilt. There's still a way to fix it. We just have to figure out how bad that is. Now, every inspector, their job is to find the discrepancies with the house. And to date, with over 1,000 transactions, in the queue, I have yet to see a repair an inspection report that says nothing is wrong. Right? So we have to let our clients know that you are going to get, discrepancies on this report. A lot of them are going to be, honeydew lists, things you want to address after the fact. It's our job to advise our clients when we see those bad things, right? What would be some of the things that we want to be on the lookout for? Daniel? Name one. Well, you said cracks, right?
Huh?
You said cracks, right?
Yeah. Leaking.
Yep, that'd be one.
Roof leaking.
Jennifer, what's something else you got to look out for?
Air conditioning issues.
Okay.
Roof.
Yep. Air conditioning, roof. Guy, you with us? I don't know if you can hear us or not. Christine, you with us?
I don't.
Robert.
I'm sorry. I
need
do
to figure
not.
out my microphone. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah. Now keep you guys mics on for a second. We'll start with Guy. What's something else that you might find wrong with the house?
Well, if for instance there was everything that I was gonna say has been said already. The air conditioning system is one, and foundation cracks. You know, asbestos, something that unforeseen.
Okay.
Anything structural that is abnormal, could make as long as the property is not livable.
Okay. So you guys are hitting some big things. I like it. Christine,
Yeah.
what about you? What do you think you might see?
Structural damage,
Okay.
um, the
Okay.
water heater,
Water heater is a big one. We see a lot of those, right? Now, water heater, is that a major repair?
no.
No, relatively small. I like it. Robert, what about you?
I've been nailed a couple times by window.
Windows?
Yes.
In what sense?
Well, they were sealed and stuff. Condensation building up in between the glass.
Okay. Yeah, if you get some double pane windows with bad sills, now is that a catastrophic repair?
Depending on how many windows.
Well, but it's still not catastrophic,
No, it can be fixed.
right? And that's what we want to make sure. We don't want to make those statements to buyers because if we let's just say we have to replace every window, and we're looking at a house that's going to be $20,000 to replace all the windows. It's not catastrophic if the seller's willing to replace or repair the windows, right? Then we win, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
So, hold on one second. Christina, you have a lot of background noise. If you can
Okay.
mute your my point is not structural issues. Yes, they're issues. They can be issues. A lot of them are not issues if if we come to terms. Now, if we have an FHA loan, some of these things become more critical, right? We need to get them fixed prior to loan. If it's cash and we find that it needs $50,000 worth of work, okay, and the seller is willing to compensate for the $50,000 or $40,000, whatever it is, and the buyer is willing to make the repairs, all of a sudden it's not catastrophic anymore.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, we need to be the voice of reason, and we need to find, the comfort zone. Now, me personally, if my clients can do it themselves, if they can afford to fix the problems, I would much rather negotiate a price reduction or sell a credit, depending on how much the damage is, so that my client, who's going to fix the repair better, the buyer or the seller?
The seller.
So,
You think?
The buyer.
Buyer. It's going to be their house. The seller is going to do it as cheaply as possible, just to to accommodate that repair addendum. So ultimately, if we can keep it with the buyer, you're going to be in a much better position. But realistically, for those of us that are working with FHA, VA, and even a lot of conventional buyers, they don't have a lot of the cash once we get through settlement to do $15,000, $20,000 worth of repairs. So we might need to get those repairs done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why people don't like working with FHA and VA, because with the appraisals, they will have lender required repairs that could be some simple stuff, peeling paint, some railings on stairways, things like that. So that's the stuff that we have to address, but it can all be accomplished. Does that make sense to everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got our docs in, we've got our inspections done. We bridge that gap. Hopefully, in the first 4 to 5 days, applications are in. The transaction coordinator has set up all your dates. You have all the general stuff set up, and and now we've covered the inspections, and we've figured out that the house is not in bad shape. Has a honeydew list, some little things you want to pay attention to. This is where most agents go wrong. They don't call their client back until it's time for the walkthrough. It's been 2, 3, 4 weeks sometimes or longer. And the client is sitting there because they can't see anything happening. Anytime we're dealing with documents on the back end, it is very stressful for buyers because they can't see anything happening. All right. This is where you make or break your relationship with that client. With all of my buyers on my calendar, right? For anybody that knows me and has seen my calendar, you know I live by my calendar, right? Every Friday morning, I follow up with everybody that is active in my queue, right? Whether they're actively looking for properties, right? Hey, no new properties have come on the market. Hey, your contract's going great. We just got back, the appraisal, or the appraisal's been ordered, right? The lender's going to order the appraisal, but we have to keep in touch with them. Now, on the team, we have it set in place to make sure that we have a catch-all, right? We have Ken that sends out weekly updates on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, and then I'm following up on Fridays. So they're getting touched twice a week throughout this whole thing. They never feel forgotten. Okay. That is the biggest thing. We want our clients to know that they are the number one person in our realm right at that moment. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
So this is where you're building that rapport. It is better to over communicate than under communicate. Right. And they may even say, hey, listen, it's, you don't need to call me, whatever. Just call them. Hey, it's part of my routine. I just want to make sure. I've had a couple of people tell me, oh, I don't need all the calls. And then they call me, 2 or 3 weeks later, because it's a longer process. And they're like, what's going on? I haven't heard anything. Okay, well, you said don't call. Right. And that happens a lot with listings when they're sitting on the market. Right. So we want to make sure we follow up. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. Any questions on any of that stuff?
One thing I was going to ask you now, doing closing, let's say the buyer do the repair, would they give him a credit doing the closing, or would they put their money up front to do that repair?
Okay. So that's going to be depending on what we negotiate, right? So if we want a credit, right, because we all know there's closing costs, right? And typically closing costs on the buyer side are going to be around 4 to 4.5%. Okay. And I want you guys to keep that in mind and definitely double check with your lenders, because depending on the loan product, we have some loan products that cap it at 3%, right? Like conventional. Now, if I negotiate, right, let's just say that the repairs are going to be 4% or 5% of the total price of the home. And I negotiate in lieu of those repairs, I negotiate 5%, right, towards towards buyer prepaids and closing costs. We just left a bunch of money on the table because they can't use more than 3%. Okay, so we just left that money on the table. So we want to figure out what it is, check with the lender, make sure we can do it. And if it's a credit, it will be credited on the settlement statement. If it's a reduction in price, okay, at that point, it'll also be, it'll have to be done in an addendum, and it will be, it'll be, again, reflected on the settlement statement. The seller cannot give you cash back at the table. Okay, does everybody hear that?
Got it.
The seller cannot. Technically, by the rules, if you get approval from the lender, they can do that. However, 99.9% of the lenders are not going to let that happen. So just plan on not doing that. Either price reduction or the seller concession.
Got it.
Okay, and if you're not sure on the numbers, let me know. Now, if we're going over the 4.5%, 5%, category, and we're going to need to make some repairs, we may be in the realm of a renovation loan. All right, so that's a whole other ball of wax which we're probably not going to have time to, go into right now. What we do have though, is if you have that many repairs, you need to be calling, myself, Heather, or Tracy to discuss, what our options are going forward prior to having that conversation with the, with your buyer. Right. Because it's all this stuff is, like I said, everything is relative. If we have structural damage, we want to make sure we're covered.
Mhm.
Sound good?
Makes sense.
Now, you want to make sure most lenders are already on point, but once the inspections are complete and we know the house is good, just check with your lender. If we have a TC like Ken, he's already double checking with the lender that the appraisal's been ordered. Okay. But the appraisal has to get ordered as soon as possible so that they can do their portion. Okay. Now,
Yep.
what happens when we get a low appraisal? Anyone?
The buyer can either come up with the difference in cash, or you just say, do you walk away?
Okay. There's some other options. That's a couple of options, but typically what's going to happen is if the appraisal comes in low, the first thing is, if you have a good listing agent, they're going to appeal that appraisal. All right. I know if I'm listing the house, I know if Heather's listing the house, we've already done our comps. Okay. So I'm going to send it off to the lender and explain to them why the house should be listed at or appraised at the higher value. Right. One of the problems that we're having in a lot of our areas, right? You're seeing Lennar and Ryan Homes and even DR Horton, which I do like DR Horton, but it's still a track builder, right? So they're putting up these houses, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2,100 square feet, and they're surrounding builders like Coulter Homes, GHO, right? And those Coulter and GHO homes are getting lower appraisals because of Ryan and Lennar. Right? Now, is a Ryan or Lennar home comparable to a GHO home? Well, some of you guys that aren't local may not know GHO, but is anybody familiar with Coulter Homes?
Heard
Right,
of it.
Jennifer? You're saying yes. Is Coulter comparable to Lennar?
They're better.
100%. Right? So we have quality of construction, not just size. Right? One of my things with my people is, all square footage is not created equal.
Mhm.
Okay. If I got a 2,000 square foot, 3 bedroom, 2 bath with Formica countertops with a traditional floor plan, as opposed to a split floor plan, same size and bedroom count, but now we got a split floor plan, superior construction, impact windows, and we have quartz countertops and upgraded cabinets. It's not the same house. Right.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure that we're verifying all this stuff. Okay. So a good listing agent is going to appeal that appraisal if it comes in low, and it may still come in low, right? Yeah, it's one of the problems that we have. So at that point, you're right. The options are, the buyer can make up the difference. The seller can drop the price to the appraised value, or we can negotiate something in between. Right? There's always ways to negotiate this.
Another way is being able to prevent that is to do more effective CMA, pretty much, right? When you do the CMA, you make sure that you are as close as the true value of the property as possible.
100%.
Yeah.
But guys, I mean, I don't care if it's a CMA or an appraisal. Ultimately, what does that equate to? Right? It's an opinion of value, correct?
That's it.
Mhm.
So it is very difficult for them to figure out. I mean, it's an opinion. And unfortunately, my opinion is going to go up against the appraiser's opinion. And I have to show the bank and their underwriters that I'm more correct than he is or she is. I've won some and I've lost some. And I've appealed a lot of appraisals. You know, Heather knows I did a lot of new construction and we were always at the top of the price point on everything. Right? That meant we got some low appraisals and we had to fight them. Okay? You win some, you lose some. That makes sense?
Yep.
If you
Okay.
appeal an appraisal, can you have a different appraiser do it, or do you have to use the same appraiser and negotiate with them?
So it's going to be the same appraiser.
Okay.
Now, little tip. All right. As you guys get going, you will start to see some of the same appraisers come through. And we're not going to go into this right now. However, there is a way around it. When I know an appraiser is bad, or I see that they're from out of town, okay, and I see that order come in, you can cancel the appraisal prior to it happening. That's the only way around it. So when you don't postpone it, cancel it. And you're going to want to check with your lender because they may or may not work with this. All right. But the way I do it is I'll cancel it, tell them that I need to have some repairs made to the house or updates, whatever they're doing. And then hopefully it'll go back into the queue and you'll get a different appraiser. Only typically works once, but it is a little bit of a workaround if you know it's a bad appraiser. Don't just start canceling appraisals. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, one of the tips for working with an appraiser, for anybody that was around, I know most of you guys are newer licensees. The appraisers that were here in 2006 and before, they caught a lot of the heat when our market collapsed because people were buying houses at 200,000. They'd put a little bit of paint and whatever, and turn around. All of a sudden, it was a $400,000 house. So with a lot of the regulations, the appraisers became kind of the scapegoat in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
So now there's very limited contact. The listing agent can have contact with the appraiser. Nobody else really should. So they're kind of like the outcast of the community. So we have to be careful when working with an appraiser because we have to realize that they're kind of, getting beat on every day. So the way I do it is if you don't want to give them an actual CMA because they tend to think that you're insulting them, that they can't do their job. However, if I just do the same thing and I just hand them, hey, listen, sir, ma'am, here is my list of my comps, right? And I'm going to show them what are we using for comps, right? The 3 best sold properties, the 3 active properties that are a competition, right? I'll provide those as well. I will do a feature sheet with every upgrade. I don't care if whatever I need to put in there. The little custom made brass doorknobs, right? That look like dolphins. I'm putting it in there, right? Anything that I can get him or her to realize that there's more value to this home, I'm going to do to highlight that home. And then I'm going to put it in a nice, neat package as the listing agent. Right now, we're talking about being a buyer's agent, but just as a side note, as a listing agent, I am going to provide that to the appraiser and let them know, hey, listen, here's what I found. I hope this helps. Makes your job a little bit easier. Let them know that we're working together. As a buyer's agent, you never, ever, ever approach the appraiser. Why would you not want to approach the appraiser as a buyer's agent?
You don't want to influence him.
Well, the whole thing is that it can be seen as influential. And as a buyer's agent, it's in our best interest to get a low appraisal because then we can negotiate the price down. And, you can tank a whole deal. So just stay away. Right. And honestly, as the buyer's agent, you should never get the contact information. But in the off chance, because it does happen that somebody sends you that information, don't contact the appraiser. Sound good?
Sounds good.
So now we're moving along, right? We've done the inspections, all of our documents, our loan commitments in, right? We have, our either our final commitment or maybe a commitment with some conditions, but we're coming close to the end. Appraisal's good. Now let's just say we had to fix a toilet, repair a light, and that was part of the negotiated terms. We're going to start to do our walkthroughs, right? Hopefully at this point, the seller has provided some receipts that this stuff has been done. Okay. Usually if you did it right, it should be by a licensed professional. Okay. We are going to schedule our walkthrough. Now there's a couple of things in play. It would probably be in your best interest to do a pre-walkthrough to make sure those things have been completed. Okay. So if you want to go a couple days early, just in case, there's something that still needs to get done, something's damaged, whatever it is, it'd be a good idea. However, if you get there 2 days prior and you see everything is done and it's great, do you want to just accept that as your final walkthrough? Jennifer, you're saying no.
What if something happens in the next 2 days?
100%. Once you go to settlement and your client owns that house, they own the problems. So we have seen multiple times in both here in Florida as well as up north, especially up north, but a lot of it's down here in Florida, copper pipes, polybutylene pipes, right? All that stuff. You do a walkthrough 2 days prior. They turn the water back on because it was a vacant house and the pipes burst and the house floods. Your buyer now owns a flooded house and the insurance company is going to tell you that that's a pre-existing condition. So it is in your best interest to really do the walkthrough again right before settlement. Okay, just to make sure that everything is still in place. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. So once we do the walkthrough, everything is good. We do the final walkthrough, then we're off to settlement. Settlement for you guys is going to be relatively easy unless there's an issue. All right. Typically, that's our chance to celebrate with our clients, make sure we go over the paperwork, make sure all the numbers are the same way that it was presented. Okay. And they're signing. Everybody's happy. Okay. As soon as settlement is done, we need to put them into our follow-up campaigns to make sure we follow up with them. Okay. I can't tell you the amount of people that I have sold houses to that had an agent at one point in their life that never followed up with them. The number one complaint filed with NAR, National Association of Realtors, is agents that don't, return messages and follow up with their clients. It's hard. It's like 85% of the complaints are about non-communication. Just by communicating, you can find so many more of the problems with this stuff and build a client for life. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Have any of you guys ever worked internet leads before? Martha, I know you have.
Worked with a what?
Internet leads?
Yes.
Okay. Does it take a lot of work to get an internet lead to buy a house?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you gotta build rapport from literally from nothing to the point where they're going to make the biggest purchase with you. However, if we have one that's a referral that came from a close friend and the friend said, absolutely, go with Martha. She's the best thing since sliced bread. Do you think that sale is going to go a little bit smoother and you already have some rapport built? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is where all through this process of working with the buyer, you're going to let them know that you're there for them. On the follow-up and as soon as settlement, if you haven't already asked, you need to be asking, who else do you know that's looking to buy and sell? Right? Honestly, I would have been asking earlier in the conversation, but some people feel a little bit silly doing it early on. Right? Those people that are buying and selling, they are 100% tuned into the buyer's market and, buyer and selling. And I guarantee you, they're talking to their friends about it. So you need to make sure that they know that they can turn people over to you. Right? For those that have known me for a little bit longer, you all know that I have a busy schedule. Right? You know that I live by my calendar. However, I have lost deals in the past because I'll call somebody. I'm like, hey, you know anybody? They're like, oh yeah, my buddy Mike, but I didn't want to bother you. I know how busy you are. Are you serious? And you sit there and I mean you'll hear that and you'll look at the phone like, did you just say that? I mean, that doesn't make sense. Right? That's how I stay busy, is because people like you refer, well, not like you, because you didn't refer me. Right? It sounds silly, but I do this stuff for a fact because I want you guys to realize this. This is a contact sport. Right? This right here, this process of connecting and staying up on them, right, is going to make the rest of your career so much easier. All right. The national statistic is an inbound phone call takes 20 minutes on average. An outbound phone call on average takes 4 minutes. Okay. By you following up with your clients and within a few minutes, hey, Lauren, just want to give you an update on your house. Everything is going good. We're all good. Conditions are met, or, we need this document from you, whatever it is. You got that? Great. Cool. Send it over. I'll talk to you in a little bit. Hang up. However, if I don't call Lauren and we're 3 weeks into this thing and she hasn't heard from me, and all of a sudden she gets a notification from the lender that they need another bank statement, Lauren's going to call me up and she's going to just start going off. I can't believe this. She didn't tell me I need bank statements. Who the hell needs bank statements? And all of a sudden it turns into a much longer, more confrontational, phone call. So be proactive, right? Heather's working on one right now. And I mean, I've been working on them for a year. Heather's taken over, but because it's right in her backyard. But this thing is, I just happened to call after calling and calling and calling and calling for the past year. Finally, she says, I'm coming on Wednesday. I got to buy a house. And Heather, what did she say? You there with us?
Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. I'm listening.
Okay.
There might be a
What did
little
she
background noise. What did she say? I knew you were going to do this.
Well-
She said, no, because it's great. It's great. And it's what we should all be doing. But sometimes it falls through the cracks. So she said, Chris had perfect timing. Because a year ago, it was actually a little bit over a year ago, they were looking to sell and come down here, but things that, she realized she didn't want to because her kids were in college there. And she says, I want to wait. So this year, when you reached out to her, it was perfect timing, because she said she was talking to a few different agents about houses down here. But because you called her and she remembered you, and she said that he had perfect timing, because I was going to come down and just, basically call whoever listing it was or whatever, because she wanted to see some places. So, and she was going to find an agent that way, but it was perfect. So, yeah.
But the thing is, I've probably called her 15 times in the past year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's probably been 2 months since I called her the last time, because, once we started to slow down, I'm not calling her every week. But I've called her multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
I referred the agent that she's listing with, right? And
Oh, sweet. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's our agent that's doing that, right? So, if I didn't follow up with her, she was already making appointments on her own.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Chris, tell them what these price points are, too. So this will tell you to follow your butt up.
Absolutely. The referral up in New Jersey is like a $775,000 sale. and then they're going to buy that. They have a $550,000 budget here, right? So, definitely a nice price point, relatively easy to find a home that they like, right? Those are the clients you want. And Heather's going out with them tomorrow. She's wound up. Now all of a sudden she's gone full steam. She wants to buy a house. House is listed up in New Jersey. They're ready to go. So, you have to make these follow-ups and make these calls. Sound good? Any thoughts, questions?
What if the appraiser has trouble finding comps? And
Okay.
you know they're going to have difficulty.
Okay. This is why I put my comps together ahead of time, right? Because I want to explain what I'm doing. Appraisers, like everybody else, there's lazy ones. Okay. The Bridgehampton, okay, perfect example. I just sold Bridgehampton. We settle on it Friday. All right. Now this home is really it's a beautiful home. Concrete block construction. It's only 2.5 years old. We have impact windows. We have I think that one has quartz countertops, if I remember correctly. We have upgraded shaker cabinets. We have tiled bathrooms with the freestanding tub. And it's a little over 2,000 square feet in a small HOA. HOAs, I think, like $100 a month or something. It's a very low HOA, but it's a gated community, right? So, and the builder did a really, really nice job on it. So, high ceilings, 2-car garage, it has everything we need. However, it is the only new homes community in this particular area. Everything within a mile of it, within the radius, was built prior to the 80s. Okay. So I can't just go out 1 mile, and it's a new home community. It's the first one being resold in that community. So I don't have any comps to run off of it. Right. So what I had to do was I knew that if I just left it to the appraiser to find a 2,000 square foot house with 3 bedrooms, he's going next door to the 1972, concrete old Florida house. So what I did was I did all my comps. I met him at the house to let him in. I was very polite about it. And I let him know, listen, because of the age of the house, I had to go further out and find comparable homes. Okay. And I presented to him, actually, I think I even put a 4th home into there, because sometimes, even though I need 3 and he or she needs 3 for his report, he may not like one or two of those comps. So he may say, no, that's not comparable. Get rid of it. So I provided extra comps so he can look at them and he doesn't have to do the legwork. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yep.
Now, it's the same thing. I was talking about GHO homes. Right now, we have communities here where GHO backs to DR Horton. 2 distinctly different builders. Okay. However, GHO has built multiple communities. So in certain cases, I will say, listen, I understand that this is not the same, area. It's 4 or 5 miles down the road, but we have another GHO model that just sold, same model, similar, upgrades in this community down the road at X amount. Now, granted, it's a little further from the river or closer to the river, whatever it is. I'll explain why I think that's a good comp. They can make the adjustments for the location. Okay. So that's the way I would handle that. And in the off case where you have a concrete bunker in the middle of Orlando with 3 bedrooms and 3 baths, and there are no comps, at that point, how would we have to get the appraisal done? At that point, we have to go with the cost approach, right? What it would cost to reproduce it.
Oh, gotcha.
Now, I will tell you, if you get into that realm, right? And guys, when I put these things out, for those of you that don't know, most of these scenarios are things that have happened to us here on the team. So we had a concrete bunker that is in the middle of Orlando in prime real estate. but it's this little concrete bunker. I mean, you can't hardly see it from the street. And unfortunately, when you get into that, a lot of times you will have a lot of appraisers that will not take the appraisal because they don't want to go through that headache. All right. With that one, we never got it to listing because the seller was really unrealistic with the pricing and, you know, some other stuff that was going on. So he never elected to sell it. Okay. But, you know, sometimes that does happen. You'll see that a lot with commercial buildings and also like farms and, you know, larger pieces of property. Make sense?
Mhm. Yep.
Does that answer your question, Martha? Okay. Who else has questions? Robert?
No, sir. Sounds great.
Warren? Daniel? Nothing? Jennifer? Nothing? Guy?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Christine? You muted.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. What about you, Heather?
I always have questions. No, I'm good. I'm good. There's just some scenarios that we've been through even recently, but with appraisals and all that have been tough. So I was going to mention some, but no, I'm good. I have no questions.
Why don't you share one with everybody? Because I find when most people learn best by real world scenarios.
Yeah, sure. Oh, I'm so sorry if you guys hear dogs in the background. So I just had an appraisal done. Stop it. I just had an appraisal done, and it was my buyer. And I did not see these because, of course, inspectors and all do not move furniture, but they flagged, the appraiser came in and flagged, switch covers. Yeah, switch plates. And now, mind you, that the inspector, we would have seen it if the inspector called it, and I could have said, hey, because I know personally that would flag an appraiser. But my client, this was the second time around because we already paid for inspections, expensive inspections on another property, and he only wanted to do a 4-point and a wind mitt, which, Chris, I'm not sure if you explained that stuff, so I'm not going to go into it.
We're going to go into inspections on another day.
Yeah. So anyway, it was just structural, mechanical, you know, that kind of stuff. So we didn't see those switch plates. Then there was also in the ceiling of the garage, which there's no garage door opener and there was no light. So I didn't even really pay attention to it, but there were wires coming out for the light. They were capped off with those little plastic caps, but that flagged the appraiser. It needs to be completely, the whole thing capped off. So what does that mean for your client? And that's why you want to kind of start recognizing what does get flagged from FHA and VA, especially if it's your seller, or even if it's your buyer, to let them know we need this fixed because we're not going to pass inspection, is because the appraiser charges to come back out. They charge my client $200 to come back out after the seller fixed it. And the seller does not have to fix it and could have totally dropped us, but they did not. So, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, you guys will learn as you do more of these, you know, the little things to pick up on. I would highly recommend, and actually, I will say as a little bit of homework for the week prior to next week's class, I would like to see everybody go tour at least one model home. Now, why is it important to tour a model home? Right? You're going to see the latest trends, right? You know, what's going on with the models. And actually, I'd probably up the ante. Do one model home and one resale. Right? Take a look at the difference in finishes. Right? Most of the model homes have full-time salespeople that are dedicated to those models, and they will tell you all of the features that are there. Right? You know, what's the difference between a single zone and dual zone or triple or quadruple zone home? Right, typically has to do with the size of the house, right? You know, but they're going to tell you about the Sears and the tonnage of the AC unit. What kind of fixtures are in there? Are we talking about Formica countertops or granite or quartz? Right, you need to start to know the difference, right? we were on back before COVID, we used to do tours, right? Where we would take a bunch of realtors and go from house to house and check out all these different listings. And we walked into this new construction, and this thing was amazing. And the agent that was doing the presentation, now granted it wasn't the listing agent, however, she was the one that brought the listing. She's like, yeah, and what we have here is builder grade cabinets. And I was like, oh, what? I was like, if you just look at the sheet, it was like, I think it was like $75,000 an upgrade. We had quartz countertops, we had upgraded soft close cabinets, we had, all the bells and whistles, upgraded appliances, and she was calling them builder grade, right? So we need to know what the differences are, right? And the only way to do this is to get out there and really touch and feel and get completely immersed in this stuff. And the best thing would be before you're out there with a client trying to figure out what the details are. I know some of you guys have already been out there and seeing some of these things, but it's really good to have that base price. Plus, I like to know what is going on with new construction, because we've had now on 2 occasions in the past month or 2 months, I guess, where we've had people with pre-approvals from local lenders for low pre-approvals. One was at 260 and the other one was at 220, right? By knowing the local market and knowing what the builders offer, because they had the lower interest rates and lower insurance rates, all that stuff, I was able to take those same buyers and go from 260 on one to 340 with almost the same payment on a new construction with DR Horton. And then the 220, I got up to 300 with almost the same payment, also on another DR Horton in another community. So, knowing the value and how these things work, all of a sudden you can take an unhappy buyer that can't find what they want in a certain price range and potentially raise it up and actually get them a new construction home. Does this help for anybody?
Yeah. Yep.
Uh,
I actually
I
do
get-
have a question.
Okay, what you got?
Do you have to have the appraisal and inspection on every home, or can they choose not to do that?
So if it's not that you need to, it's that the lender is going to require certain things. If you have cash, there's no requirement. You don't have to do an inspection. You don't have to do an appraisal. I highly recommend. Yeah, it's a great question. I highly recommend that you have your clients do a home inspection. Right now, you're going to want to have the 4-point and the wind mitt, because you're going to need them for insurance purposes. Okay, but that's only a partial inspection. I highly recommend doing a full inspection. All right, and if you have a septic or a well, you're going to want to do those. And I also recommend, with every house in Florida, a termite inspection. Okay, so depending on if you're on public water and public sewer, they're not as important for the well and septic, right? Because they're not there. But the other stuff you want to do, it is in your client's best interest to get the inspection. As far as the appraisals, if you're dealing with financing, the lenders have the right, if you have enough money down, they can waive the appraisal requirement, which we have seen in certain circumstances. Okay. But most of the time, the lender is the one requiring the appraisal. And then once they have the appraisal, they will lend the money on that house. Make sense? Now, going the other way, if you have a cash buyer, okay, and you recommend an appraisal, right? Now, don't get me wrong. If you have a cash buyer, like the one that I'm about to do with Daniel, and we're going to be on the water, and, we're going to be on the water, and it's a unique house, and we got a budget of $2.5 million or so, they may want to have the appraisal just because of how unique the property is. Farms, you got 100 acres, you're probably going to want to get the appraisal. But if it's a 3-2 in a gated community where there's been 14 other, comparable sales, and you recommend still getting the appraisal, you do run the risk of having your buyer wonder why you can't do a proper CMA. Okay. Now, if you're not comfortable with it, this is why we have our meetings, right? And these trainings here, because I want you guys to bring this here and we'll discuss it here. We've already discussed in this group here, no matter what you guys say, right? Nothing, there's no wrong question, no wrong answer. Right? If there's something that's not right, we'll fix it. But once you guys are out there working with your clients, the game is on the line.
Mhm.
So bring that stuff here. Perfect question. Bring that stuff. But does that make sense, Lauren?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, with the lender, they're going to probably require the appraisals.
Saw like 6 model homes today if anybody needs
Oh,
some
which builder?
tips. We went to it was Adams Homes and Meritage Homes.
Okay, awesome.
Meritage is definitely nice.
Yeah, there's some great builders out there. With the one we're doing with AR Homes, I mean, that thing's just going to be colossal. I can't wait to see it completed. They just build an amazing product. So you got to get out there. You got to know what the inventory is, both on the pre-owned and the new, and be able to know what the differences are. But I like it. Keep up the good work, and I can't wait to see that open house. I might even swing by
Yeah,
and
come
see
on.
what you guys have going on.
Christopher wants flowers. That's all.
Yeah,
Oh, we'll save you some.
yeah.
Lauren, tell everybody what you're doing real quick. I think it's awesome.
Okay, so we're doing our open house on Saturday, and then we're just doing a little build your own Mother's Day bouquet. So we'll get the vases and the flowers and little cards.
Okay, awesome. Great idea. Obviously, anybody knows me, I'm not a flower guy, right? So you're probably not going to see me do that, but you have to do things that match your personality. So, Lauren, that is a great idea. And, I wish you a lot of luck with it. I know the post already went out on social media. So hopefully you get a lot of traction on that. Make sure you go in there and share that with all the local communities and stuff. Let's get as much traction for this as possible.
Okay.
All right. Folks, you get out of this what you put into it. All right. I can't stress that enough. The more you put into it, this is a personal job. If you do this right, when you get home, you're going to be exhausted because you left everything out on the field. Right. And I know it sounds silly. We're not in a football game or whatever, but you have to put your time and energy into this.
Oh my God, that's so true. Jeez.
And it will come back to you, and it will get easier as you start to build those pipelines.
Mhm.
Sound good? I know it's after 7 o'clock. I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. Anybody have any last minute questions?
No, sir.
All right. Well, we'll be right back here, same time next week. For most of you guys, I'll hopefully see you on the huddle tomorrow morning, 8:45. All right. We're only in Tuesday. We got a lot of days left. We got great things happening. So let's keep up the good work. I'm proud of you guys, and I appreciate everyone showing up tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Bye-bye.
All
Bye,
right. See
y'all.
you guys in a little
Thanks,
bit.
Chris.
My pleasure. See you soon. Bye.